How schools accidentally made children hate books. Last time, we blamed the phone. In part 2, we put social media in the dock. The verdict was annoyingly complicated. There is no good evidence that TikTok has magically reduced human attention span to 8 seconds, but there are perfectly reasonable grounds for worrying about an information environment built around interruption, rapid content switching, infinite feeds, and constant novelty. Social media may not have broken our ability to read. It may simply have trained habits that compete extremely effectively with sustained reading. But there was a problem. As we established in part 1, the decline in reading predates TikTok. It predates Instagram. Some of it predates the smartphone becoming ubiquitous. So perhaps reading was already vulnerable. And if we want to understand why children stopped enjoying books, there's another institution we need to examine: school. Which is awkward because schools are responsible for teaching children to read. So how could they possibly be part of the reason that children stopped wanting to? Learning to read is not the same as wanting to read. There's a distinction at the heart of this entire episode. Reading ability and reading motivation are not the same thing. A child can be perfectly capable of reading and have absolutely no desire to do it. That sounds obvious, but education systems have a problem with things that are difficult to measure. Schools can measure reading ages, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, inference, retrieval, exam results, progress. They can put all of that into spreadsheets and colour little boxes red, amber and green. What they cannot easily measure is whether 10 years after leaving school, somebody voluntarily thinks, "I've got a free afternoon, I might read a book." And yet, if we're interested in creating lifelong readers, that may be the most important outcome of all. The National Literacy Trust 2025 research found a statistically significant relationship between reading enjoyment and stronger reading scores among 8 to 14-year-olds. Children who enjoyed reading scored higher on average than those who didn't. So enjoyment isn't some fluffy optional extra that schools can worry about after they've finished doing the serious educational stuff. Enjoyment and attainment appear to be connected, and that creates a rather nasty paradox. A great educational transformation. Consider what happens to a book when it enters a classroom. At home, here's a book. At school, here's a book and a worksheet, and 6 comprehension questions, and a learning objective, and a success criterion, and a reading level, and 3 unfamiliar words you need to underline, and an instruction to identify the author's use of metaphor, and somebody will be checking later. We've taken an object capable of transporting a child into another world and attached paperwork to it. It's a remarkable achievement. It's like giving somebody an ice cream and saying, before eating this, please identify 3 examples of emulsification and explain how they contribute to the overall dessert. Technically educational, possibly not how Haagen-Dazs became popular. The comprehension question. Comprehension questions obviously have a purpose. Teachers need to know whether children understand what they're reading. If a child finishes Charlotte's Web believing Charlotte is a horse, some intervention may be appropriate. The problem begins when comprehension becomes the experience of reading. Read this paragraph. Stop. Answer the question. Read another paragraph. Stop. Find evidence. Explain your answer. Use a full sentence. Where exactly is the evidence in paragraph 4? Now, imagine watching a film like that. Every 90 seconds, the screen freezes. Question 7. Why do you think Luke Skywalker appears concerned? Use evidence from the previous scene. Nobody would watch films. We'd burn cinemas down. Yet we sometimes seem surprised when children conclude that reading is something adults make you do before asking whether you've understood it correctly. And then we cut the book into pieces. There's another peculiar feature of education, the extract. Extracts are useful. You can teach a specific technique without spending 6 weeks reading an entire novel. You can expose pupils to many writers. You can compare styles. You can fit something into a 40-minute lesson. But sustained reading depends upon almost the opposite experience. A novel accumulates. You know these characters because you've spent hours with them. Something insignificant on page 40 suddenly matters on page 200. Tone develops, ideas recur, relationships change. The pleasure partly comes from continuity. An extract gives you 4 pages from the middle and then asks, how does the writer create tension? Well, presumably quite successfully in the other 296 pages as well, but apparently we're never going to find out. If children repeatedly encounter literature as specimens to be dissected rather than experiences to be completed, perhaps we shouldn't be astonished if some become extremely competent at literary autopsy without developing much affection for the patient. The reading level problem. And then there are reading levels. Again, they exist for good reasons. Children need appropriate material. Teachers need to identify difficulties. And a 7-year-old struggling to decode basic sentences probably shouldn't be handed Moby Dick and told to have a crack. But reading levels can quietly change the meaning of choosing a book. A child walks into a library. They see something fascinating. Dinosaurs, football, ghosts, spacecraft, murder. Hopefully, age-appropriate murder. They pick it up, and then they're told, that's not your level. From a school's perspective, that's instructional guidance. From the child's perspective, something more interesting may have happened. They chose a book, and the choice was rejected. The National Literacy Trust found in 2025 that freedom to choose was one of the things children themselves said would motivate them to read. Interests and hobbies mattered too, as did connections with films and television. Children are effectively telling us, I might read if you let me read the things I actually want to read. An astonishing pedagogical breakthrough. Someone alert the universities. Compulsory reading has a terrible public relations department. Then we get to compulsory texts. And this is difficult because schools absolutely should introduce children to books they wouldn't choose themselves. That's part of education. If we only ever encountered ideas we've already wanted, education would largely consist of confirming our existing preferences. Great teachers can bring difficult, old, or initially inaccessible books alive, but compulsion changes a relationship. There's a difference between, you should try this, and I think you'll love it, and you'll read this because there's an examination in June. One is recommendation, the other is a hostage situation. The book may be brilliant, but now every chapter carries the faint smell of assessment. Themes must be remembered, quotations highlighted, characters analysed, possible exam questions anticipated. Macbeth hasn't even murdered Duncan yet, and somebody's already asking whether the weather represents moral disorder. Just let the man commit the regicide first, when everything becomes attainment. This is where I think the structural problem appears. Schools are under enormous pressure to demonstrate progress. Governments want evidence, parents want evidence, inspectors want evidence, senior leaders want evidence, teachers themselves need evidence that what they're doing works. And so reading becomes measurable attainment. How many words? What level? What score? What target? What percentage? What progress? And those measurements can be useful, but intrinsic motivation works differently. You do something intrinsically because the activity itself is rewarding. The National Literacy Trust now explicitly emphasises intrinsic motivation as central to developing lifelong readers alongside curiosity, personal meaning, choice, relevance, book talk, and adults modelling themselves as readers. That's almost the inverse of reading because somebody will test you afterwards. And children themselves seem perfectly capable of recognising the difference. Ask the children in 2025. The National Literacy Trust collected written responses about reading from more than 58,000 children and young people. The responses are fascinating. Keen readers talked about joy, escape, calm, choice, and encouragement. Children who dislike reading commonly described boredom, effort, irrelevance, difficulty concentrating, and negative associations with reading as a school activity. Across different groups, choice, access, supportive environments, and freedom from pressure mattered. That doesn't prove schools caused the reading crisis. It would be absurd to leap from some children associate reading negatively with school to education killed books. Schools are competing with enormous cultural forces, family, reading habits, poverty, access to books, phones, gaming, streaming, social media. And frankly, teachers have enough things being blamed on them already. But those responses do reveal something important. For some children, reading and schoolwork have become psychologically entangled. And if reading means work, why would you voluntarily do it when the school day ends? Something happens around secondary school. There's another clue. Reading falls dramatically as children get older. In the National Literacy Trust's 2025 data, 44.5% of children aged 5 to 8 said they read daily in their free time. Among 11 to 14-year-olds, 17.1%. That doesn't establish what caused the decline. Adolescence changes everything. Social lives become more important. Homework increases. Interests change. Nobody reaches year 8 and thinks, excellent, puberty, at last I can abandon the gruffalo. But secondary school is also where reading increasingly becomes disciplinary. Text becomes things to analyse, literature becomes curriculum, reading becomes associated with examinations. The timing is at least uncomfortable enough that we should ask whether education sometimes succeeds at making children better students of text while failing to preserve them as readers. But here's the important part. Some schools get it right. If schooling inevitably destroyed reading pleasure, every school would have the same problem. They don't. There are schools deliberately building cultures where reading exists partly outside assessment. And what they do differently is revealing. Choice matters, access matters, libraries matter, teachers talking enthusiastically about books matters, children recommending books to one another matters, and time to simply read matters. Different formats matter. Comics count, graphic novels count, non-fiction counts, magazines count. The objective isn't to trick children into reading something sufficiently respectable. It's to help them discover the experience of wanting to continue. The National Literacy Trust Schools Guidance increasingly emphasises exactly these things: individual choice, personal interest, accessible reading environments, reading ambassadors, teachers modelling reading, and opportunities for independent reading rather than relying entirely on group activities. That isn't abandoning literary instruction. It's recognizing that literacy instruction and reading for pleasure are related but different jobs. The library may matter more than the worksheet. And there is some encouraging evidence that this isn't hopeless. The Library for Primaries invested in school libraries, book stock and teacher development. A year later, 87% of participating teachers reported continued improvements in their school's reading for pleasure culture. 2/3 of children said they enjoyed reading more and read more often than a year earlier. Those aren't randomized laboratory results, so we shouldn't pretend they prove that installing a library magically creates readers. But they are encouraging, and the National Literacy Trust programs aimed particularly at children who are least engaged with reading have also reported improvements in confidence, enjoyment, and frequency, which suggests something extremely important. Children haven't simply become biologically incompatible with books. Change the environment, and some of them come back. Perhaps we've been optimizing the wrong thing. Imagine an education system that becomes extraordinarily good at producing measurable reading outcomes. Children can retrieve information, identify techniques, make inferences, compare text, analyse language, pass examinations. And then, the moment nobody requires them to read anymore, they stop. Would we call that success? Academically, perhaps. Culturally, I'm not so sure, because the ultimate reading test isn't necessarily the one taken at 16. It may be the one taken at 26. There is no examiner, no worksheet, no target, no teacher. Nobody knows whether you do it. There's simply a book and a question. Do you want to open it? So, did schools make children hate books? No, that's much too simple. Schools teach millions of children to read. Teachers introduce children to books they love for the rest of their lives. School libraries can provide access to books that a child could never afford at home. For disadvantaged children in particular, school may be the most important reading environment they have, and plenty of teachers are already doing extraordinary work to create readers rather than merely measure reading. But I do think education contains a genuine contradiction. We want children to experience reading as intrinsically rewarding. Then we surround it with intrinsic requirements, levels, questions, targets, assessments, evidence, compulsory text, progress. We take something we hope children will eventually do when nobody is making them and spend years making them do it. Perhaps some of the reading crisis comes from that contradiction, not because schools are hostile to books, almost the opposite, because schools care so much about reading that we've tried to measure, teach and optimise every component of it. And somewhere along the way, the pleasure can disappear between the spreadsheet columns. The good news. Unlike some of the problems we've encountered in this series, this one looks remarkably reversible. Give children access. Give them choice. Let them abandon books they hate. Let them read comics. Let them read non-fiction. Let them read ridiculous things. And let adults visibly enjoy books. Let children recommend books to each other, and occasionally let them finish a chapter without immediately asking them to identify 3 examples of foreshadowing. The current evidence suggests that reading enjoyment can move in the right direction. In 2026, UK reading enjoyment among 8 to 18-year-olds rose from 32.7% to 36.1%, the first increase since 2021, although it remains far below earlier levels. So the patient isn't dead. It may simply be extremely irritated by worksheets. But why should we care? And that brings us to part 4. So far, we've established that reading is declining. We've asked whether the modern attention economy may be making sustained reading harder. And we've asked whether education sometimes turns reading from an intrinsically rewarding activity into measurable work. But there's an obvious objection to this entire series. So what? Culture changes, technologies change. People once spent enormous amounts of time listening to radio plays. They don't anymore. Perhaps books are simply another medium losing their privileged position. Why should anybody care? And that question takes us somewhere much bigger, because in part 4, I want to ask what sustained reading actually does that other forms of information consumption may not. What happens cognitively when you spend hours following an argument, inhabiting another person's perspective, while constructing an imagined world from language? And if fewer people do that regularly, do we actually lose something important? Or are book people simply watching their favourite cultural habit disappear and confusing nostalgia with catastrophe? That's part 4. What do we lose when we stop reading? Because if the answer is nothing particularly important, then perhaps the entire reading crisis isn't a crisis at all, and I can finally stop making these videos and watch a Norwegian man build a house out of mud.